students, Mr. G here with another educational video. This time we're going to be talking about general fractions word problems. So these ones oftentimes involve adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, or sometimes a combination of all of those. What's really tricky with these is knowing what to use and when. So before we start into these problems, I wanted to remind you for some of the language that you might see for multiplication and division. For adding and subtracting, it's usually a lot more straightforward, like plus or added together or puts together. You don't usually see these very specific patterns with multiplication and division. Some of the examples that I'm going to show you are examples where this language maybe doesn't show up. So we've got to be really careful and thoughtful with these types of problems, and a lot of practice is required so you can understand when to use which operations. We're told that Mike works at a grocery store, makes $18 an hour, and if he works over 40 hours in a week, he gets paid time and a half. So time and a half, this just means 1.5 times his pay. So how much does he earn in a week where he works 43 1/3 hours? To help us with this problem, what's going to be important is to split up his regular work and his overtime work, basically where he's getting paid extra. For his regular hours, he worked 40 hours, making $18 per hour. So we multiply those two together, and we see that he makes $720 in regular wages. Now during overtime, that's those extra 3 1/3 hours that he worked, he gets paid time and a half. So his pay is 1.5 times $18. So we should be figuring out how much he's getting paid every hour during those extra hours here. So 1.5 times 18, we got to convert this into an improper fraction. And remember that 18 is the same as 18 over 1, so we can multiply the tops and the bottoms here. And then we can reduce this fraction and see that he's getting paid now $27 an hour. And he's working for 3 1/3 hours. So we have 3 1/3 times his new overtime pay of $27 an hour. We can convert this into an improper fraction, multiply the tops and the bottoms, and then reduce our fraction here and see that he's going to get paid $90 for his overtime hours. If we want to find how much he earns in a week in total, we've got to just add those two together. And we can see that his total is going to be $810 for his week of work. All right, let's try this question here. So our class hand sanitizer is about 5/7 alcohol, and the rest of it is water. For those of you that didn't know, the hand sanitizer that you're using on your hands contains alcohol. Now the alcohol inside the hand sanitizer is different than the stuff that people drink, so it's definitely a bad idea to drink the hand sanitizer. The first question here is what volume of alcohol is in 280 milliliters of sanitizer? Now, if you remember this of here, 280 milliliters of sanitizer, right? So we want to find the alcohol content. So 280 milliliters of sanitizer, if 5/7 of it is alcohol, the answer here would be to calculate 5/7 of 280 milliliters. Which is the same as 5/7 times 280. Remember that we can have 280 over 1, multiply the tops and the bottoms, and then we can just do this division here, and we get that there are 200 milliliters of alcohol in this 280 milliliters of hand sanitizer. But what happens if we flip this kind of problem around? So now we want to find the volume of hand sanitizer that contains 395 milliliters of alcohol. So now this is kind of reversed. Because now we want to know 5/7 of something gives us 395 milliliters. Because 5/7 of our hand sanitizer here, which we don't know the volume, should have 395 milliliters of alcohol. So what we're trying to do is 5/7 times something we don't know equals 395. Now, if you remember back to our video on dividing and multiplying word problems, this is the same as saying that this unknown quantity is equal to 395 divided by 5/7. If you don't remember that, go back to that video. I explain it a little bit more there. If we're dividing by a fraction, remember that this is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. And now we can do this multiplication. Now we could do it like we did last time, where we just multiply the tops and the bottoms together, but especially where we have big numbers like this, doing a little bit of cross-reducing can be helpful. We know that this is going to be a multiple of 5 because it ends in a 5, so we'll divide the bottom by 5, and we'll divide this top by 5. 395 divided by 5 would be equal to 79. So now our answer would just be 79 times 7 over 1, which is 553 over 1. In other words, 553. So the volume of hand sanitizer we need for 395 milliliters of alcohol would be 553 milliliters. So this is how much hand sanitizer you need to get this much alcohol. Our last question here is asking for the volume of hand sanitizer, just like this one. But now we're looking for it to contain 240 milliliters of water. At this point, we probably need to scroll back up to the question. If 5/7 of our hand sanitizer is alcohol and the rest is water, that tells us that water is going to be 2/7 of our hand sanitizer. So in this case, 2/7 of some amount of hand sanitizer here needs to be giving us 240 milliliters of water. So just like last time, this is 2/7 times our unknown amount of hand sanitizer needs to give us 240 milliliters. And this is the same as dividing 240 milliliters by 2 over 7. Or to multiply it by 7 over 2. This is even, so we can do some cross-reducing to make our lives a little bit easier. And then 7 times 120 gives us 840 milliliters of hand sanitizer in order to get 240 milliliters of water. Alrighty, let's check your understanding. There's a question on the screen here. Pause the video, grab a piece of paper, and try it out for yourself. All done? All right, let's go over the answer. So, the first thing that we're told is that we've got big shelves and little shelves. And we're told that one holds a certain fraction as many books as the big one, and they all together hold 115 books. So the first thing that I'm thinking is, let's draw this out. We've got a big shelf, and then we've got one little one, and then we've got another little one. Now our big shelf holds some amount of books. We don't know how much that is. These little shelves each hold a third of however much the big one does. So if we were to combine all of these together, this is like one big shelf and then 2/3 of a big shelf. So together, if we were to put all of these together, it would be like having 1 2/3 of a big shelf. And again, this is like multiplying. If it's 1 2/3 of a big shelf, this is like 1 2/3 times whatever's on this big shelf. That would be the total of all of these. And we know that this should be equal to a grand total of 115 books. Now we've seen questions like this before with this sort of setup. If we want to figure out what this question mark is, that's the same as taking 115 and dividing it by this, 1 2/3. If we're dividing with fractions, the key here is that we can turn this into a multiplication with a reciprocal. But remember, this only works if this is an improper fraction. So we've got to turn this into 5 over 3 first. Once we get here, we can flip our second fraction, and we can multiply these two together. Before I do that, though, let's do a little bit of cross-reducing. I'll divide this by 5 and divide this by 5, and then we can multiply the tops and the bottoms together, and we get 69 as our answer. But now we need to pause and think about, what does this number represent? Well, we did this all in terms of the number of big shelves that we have. So if we have one big shelf, that's our question mark here, that's equal to 69. That tells us that on the big shelf there are 69 books. But we also want to know how much are on the little shelves. So to get that, we need to do 1/3 times this question mark. So 1/3 of 69, which comes out to be, when you do this multiplication, equal to 23. So there are 23 books on each of these little shelves. And we can actually check our answer at the very end just to make sure that it makes sense. So if we say that there's 69 books here and then 23 on these two, let's just quickly add together 69 plus 23 plus 23. We'll get 92 plus 23, which gives us 115. So we can be confident that we got the right answer. That's the end of the video here. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.